Hi everybody, hope you are doing well. My name is Saajid. Welcome back to my channel. Before we start this video, it's raining right now, and you know, when the rain hits the galvanized, it makes this really loud, annoying, obnoxious sound. Some people actually like it. I've gotten comments before from people saying that they find it soothing. I find it irritating. It upsets the balance of my soul and my spirit, and I'm not happy with the fact that it's raining right now, but there's really nothing I can do about that. So if it also irritates you, I'm sorry that you have to spend this video listening to that. But yeah, today I'm going to be sharing with you all the top 12 Caribbean books that I plan to read this year. Disclaimer though, this is a very limited list. Do not take this as an exhaustive list of Caribbean literature, because after I put it together, I realized two things. All of these books are set in the Anglophone or English speaking Caribbean, so I didn't really put any Spanish speaking or French speaking books on this list. And half of the books are all set in Trinidad. I might be a little bit biased with that one, but I don't really feel like altering the list or anything. These are just genuinely the top 12 books that I really want to read this year that are written by Caribbean authors and that are set at least partially in the Caribbean or in the Caribbean diaspora. So let's just jump straight into it and talk about the Trinidadian books. First of all, Love After Love by Ingrid Passad. This book has been so much buzz. So many people have been reading this book and talking about this book, and it has just made my heart so warm and happy because I love that so much people in the book community was going really hard for a Trinidadian story. So this is a story about a woman named Betty and her son Solo. Betty's husband, Solo's dad, passed away and he was really abusive or whatever, and they end up befriending a man named Mr. Chattan, and basically Mr. Chattan becomes really close with them until the son and the mother end up becoming estranged. The son moves away to New York, and Mr. Chattan is like the only person that they both still talk to, and then they both end up finding out some unsettling truth about him, which I guess brings them back together. I don't know. I just heard amazing things about this book this year, and I'm so happy for Ingrid Passad because she's been getting a lot of hype and recognition, and I just really love that. I really love that an Indo-Trinidadian story is being celebrated to the extent that it is. So I'm really looking forward to getting into this one. I was actually sent an ARC of the book by the US publisher, and I didn't read it because I'm a horrible person. So I will hopefully be reading that sometime within the next couple of months. The next Trinidadian book that we have is Off Track by Tamika Gibson. I read Dreams Beyond the Shore by Tamika Gibson and really loved it. And I think I read Off Track as well. The thing about it is that it was one of the books for the Codebird Award for Caribbean Young Adult Literature in 2019, which I was a judge for. And basically the book was submitted as a manuscript and it won second place, but it was never published until now. I believe, at least I think this is the same book. It's a young adult novel about this girl who is running track and field and this boy who I believe is also in the same sport or in another sport, and they both kind of meet each other and they fall for each other, but circumstances in their life make their relationship very difficult. I really enjoyed the manuscript of this book back when I read it, and I'm interested to see how much of the story was changed. Or maybe I'm completely wrong and this is a completely different story, but it doesn't matter because I really enjoyed the book that I read, and I enjoyed the other story that I read from Tamika Gibson as well. She's a great writer and I look forward to reading anything that she writes. The next book is a really interesting one, and that is 1 Year of Ugly by Caroline Mckenzie. So this is set in Trinidad and it's about a Venezuelan immigrant family who unintentionally and innocently end up getting involved in some kind of like sketchy crime ring, and it's about them dealing with that and navigating that as immigrants in Trinidad. I'm really fascinated to read this one because I've never read anything about an immigrant experience in Trinidad, especially Venezuelan immigrants. And it's really relevant because prior to the pandemic, there was an influx of Venezuelan immigrants coming to Trinidad because of the unrest going on in that country. And there's been a lot of conversations about Venezuelan immigration and what it means for Trinidad and what having this like new segment of the population means for the wider society. Obviously, people in Trinidad are also very xenophobic and racist towards them, so there's a lot of conversation surrounding that as well. So I'm interested to see what angle the author of this story takes. I don't think the author herself is Venezuelan. I think she's a white Trinidadian, but I've heard amazing things about this story from people who've read it this year, so I'm hoping that it will live up to my expectations, and I have a feeling that it will. Next up we have The Mermaid of Black Conch by Monique Roffrey, I think is her name. She is a Trinidadian author based in the UK, and I've seen her books for years. Like, you know, people always talk about her book. She's a very well-known writer down here, but I haven't read anything from her. But ever since this book came out, I've been intrigued. All I know about it is that it's a Trinidadian mermaid story, which sounds amazing. A lot of people in the Caribbean book community, again, have been raving about it, so I'm really excited to get to this one if and when I can. The next book is not so much a book, but an author who I was introduced to last year. I read 3 of her books, absolutely love them, and I just want to read the rest of her work this year. And that is, of course, if you haven't guessed it by now, Shani Mutu. As I said, I love the 3 books that I read from her last year. I praised them in my previous video, and this is the only book that I have from her right now. I have another novel from her that I lent out to my friend, and that's called Moving Forward Sideways Like a Crab. This one is called Hidrongshi in the Sea, and it is set between a fictional Caribbean island, I presume inspired by Trinidad and Canada. So the main protagonist, I believe, is from the country or the Caribbean island, and he moves to Canada, but he's kind of like missing the love of his life who he left back there, and it's about that, I guess. I mean, I don't need to know what any Shani Mutu book is about now to read it. Like, anything she writes, I will read, and I have a feeling I will love this one as well as anything else that I read from her this year. So there's this one, there's the other novel that I lent out to my friend, and I believe she has a couple of anthologies as well. So once I read all of that, I would have read all of her work, and that's what I want to do this year. Like, that's one of my reading goals. I want to read everything else by Shani Mutu because I loved everything that I read from her last year, and I'm just really curious to see what the rest of her work is like. So the final book by a Trinidadian author on this list is Sweet Hand by Ng Peltier. So this one is a romance novel set in Trinidad, and I believe it has something to do with baking. I don't know any other detail other than I follow the author on Twitter and she's really great, and we're actually going to be reading this for Bashment Book Club in April. So if you want, you could get yourself a copy and read along with us. The book, I believe, is coming out at the end of March. I'm really excited for this one, and I'm just very happy that we're getting a story set in Trinidad that isn't like, you know, heavy or that deals with like, you know, deep political issues or anything like that. It probably touches on things, maybe it will or not, but it's definitely not going to be a heavy-handed, sad or tragic story. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one, and I also am happy to be supporting an independent Trinidadian writer, because in 2021 we need to keep supporting indie authors, and that's something that I need to do better at, especially Caribbean indie authors. So really looking forward to this one, and I have a feeling I'm going to enjoy it. So that's all of the Trinidadian books. We have some other books from other Anglophone Caribbean writers that I'm really looking forward to reading this year as well. And the next 2 books that I'll be talking about, I want to read those 2 books, but I also, again, just want to read anything I can by those authors in general in 2021. And the first one is Joanne C. Hillhouse. The book that I really want to read from her is Oh God, which is in my university library, so I could just get it there. And this book is about a girl who was born in Antigua and grew up in the States with her dad, and she's always been estranged from her mother, who remained back home in Antigua. So she never really had a good relationship with her mom. She never really used to talk to her. And in this story, I believe she returns to Antigua for the first time as an adult for her mother's funeral. So her mother passes away, and she decides while she's there that she wants to live there. So I guess it's about her kind of like reacquainting herself with the country that she was born in and living there, and what that's like for her, as well as dealing with the grief of losing a mother who she never really knew or had a relationship with. It sounds like it's going to be a really sad, heavy read, but I've heard amazing things about Joanne C. Hillhouse, and there are a couple other books of hers that I would like to hopefully get to this year as well, but this one is my main priority. Another author I have to read this year is Shah, a Guyanese author. I absolutely adored A Silent Life, which I read last year. It was one of the most impactful books that I read last year. It was my favorite book of last year, and this one I'm very excited for. It is set in Guyana, and it is about a Indo-Guyanese Muslim family. The father of the family dies, and it's basically following the 3 children, all of whom had their own kind of complex relationship with the father, and it's about them sort of like dealing with the grief of losing their father. The description of the story sounds really boring, but I'm just very excited to read this because I know that Shah is a stunning writer. Even if the book itself is not that enjoyable, I know that I will at least enjoy her prose, and I'm also very much looking forward to reading another story that kind of focuses on an Indo-Caribbean Muslim experience, because y'all know that's me, that's who I am, that's my vibe, and I would like to see more of that in Caribbean literature. So really looking forward to this one as well. And she has another book that I lent out to my friend called Weaving Water, I think, and that one is also kind of like a magical realism vibe kind of books, like what she did with A Silent Life. So I will hopefully be reading that one this year, but again, this is like my main priority for Shah. Moving on over to Barbados, we have The Girl with the Hazel Eyes by Cali Browning. I'm actually currently currently reading this one, and this is our Bashman Book Club pick for February. This is another independent Caribbean author, and it is about a woman from Barbados who goes to visit this very famous Bajan author who's based in the States. And that author wrote a very controversial book that's considered like a Caribbean classic in this fictional world, of course. And that book was really controversial, and it kind of blacklisted the author, so she had to leave Barbados and she's now living in Florida. And the main character of the book is also a writer, and she was kind of like hired to write the life story of this very famous controversial writer. So she travels from Barbados to Florida to go visit this writer, and the writer is essentially telling her story. So we're in the present with them and their interactions and whatnot, but we're also going back into the past as we hear the life story of this famous controversial writer. So far, I'm really liking where this story is heading, and I have a feeling like once I get into it, it's definitely going to grip me, because I like the idea of like this mysterious, controversial Caribbean writer telling her life story for the first time, and this young sort of naive newbie writer trying to make ends meet by writing this story, and we'll probably, find out more about her own self as she goes through this journey. So really looking forward to finishing this one, and I have a feeling I will enjoy it. Finally, we will be heading over to Jamaica to talk about a book that I keep saying that I will read ever since I got it like a year and a half ago, but I could never read it at this point. I don't know what's wrong with me. I have been putting this book on so many TBR lists to the point where I think I've convinced myself that I've already read it, but that is of course Patsy by Nicole Dennis Benn. This is a story about a woman named Patsy from Jamaica who is queer and who leaves her child and her mother behind to go live her life with the love of her life in New York City. And it's about the consequences of that decision on both Patsy and her child's life. I've heard that it's very sad, which is expected because I read Here Comes the Sun, which is also a very tragic and sad story, but so good. Nicole Dennis Benn is an excellent writer, and I've heard that this book is even better than Here Comes the Sun, and if that's the case, I know that I will very much enjoy this story. Hi everybody, Nighttime Saajid here. I am exhausted, I am tired, I really want to sleep, but I realized that I needed to come back and tell you all something, which is that I am fucking stupid. My dumb ass told you all at the beginning of this video that I will be talking about 12 books, and I only talked about 10. So you might be thinking, okay Saajid, what are the 2 books that you forgot? Well, I didn't forget any books. I literally counted the books wrong. I made a list of 10 books, and for some reason I thought I wrote down a list of 12 books.
Wait, stop the motherfucking music. You.
Yes?
Are you dumb?
Yes. Anyways, I have a huge Caribbean Tbr highlight thingy on my Instagram, so if you want to go check it out, you could do that at musaho_books, and there's tons of Caribbean books in that highlight that I haven't read as yet. But I decided to go through that highlight and pick out 2 more books that are not Anglophone books, because at the beginning I told you all that I'll only be showing you books that are Anglophone Caribbean or English-speaking Caribbean, but I thought that I would mix it up and get a Spanish-speaking Caribbean story as well as a French-speaking Caribbean story. So the first one that I decided to get, and I actually already bought this on Kindle because it was really cheap, only like $2 on Kindle, so if you want to buy it on Kindle, go buy it on Kindle. It's called Crick Crack by Edwidge Danticat. This is a collection of short stories set in Haiti that follows the experiences of Haitians during a particular time in Haitian politics. So I'm really excited to read it because I haven't really read a lot of stuff set in Haiti, and I've heard really amazing things about this author. So I have a feeling that this, if not this book, but that this author in general is going to be a new favorite of mine. So this could be another one where it's like, yeah, this particular book, but also the author in general, because I hear about Danticat all the time and I definitely need to start reading some of her work. The next book that I really want to read is by a Cuban author, and I believe it was published after his death. It's called Before Night Falls by Ronaldo Arenas. So from what I understand, this is a memoir of a very prominent activist from Cuba and poet. I'm reading the summary right now and it just sounds so interesting and so devastating at the same time, and I definitely think that this is something that I will walk away from with a lot. The summary is Ronaldo Arenas was born in poverty-stricken Cuba. By the time of his death in New York 4 decades later, he had become one of Cuba's most important poets and outspoken critics of Castro's regime, and one of the leading gay voices of the 20th century. So this book is like a memoir about like his time in Cuba, fighting for the revolution, and his suppression as a writer, his disillusionment with Castro, his imprisonment and torture, his exile from Cuba to New York. He was diagnosed with AIDS. He committed suicide in 1990. And it's just a story about his life. It sounds like it's going to be a really heavy read, but it was recommended to me by a good colleague of mine, and I think that I definitely will enjoy this one, even though it might be a little bit more on the sad side. So really looking forward to reading that, and those are the 2 extra books that I came up with to actually make this list a list of 12. And that clicking sound is my laptop. She is having a midlife crisis right now. I might need to fix her or get a new laptop, but yeah, back to past Saajid. And there we have it. Those are all of the Caribbean books that I'm hoping to read this year. As you might know, I'm on a book buying ban, so I'm really prioritizing the books that I physically own first. And as you can see, only 4 of the books that on this entire list I actually physically own. So there's a good possibility that I might even get around to some of these. These are just the books that I really right now am craving to read that are set in the region or in the diaspora. So in the comments down below, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books and if you have any thoughts on them. And if there are any other Caribbean books that you'd like to recommend to me or that you are looking forward to reading this year, let me know that as well. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day, and until next time, inshallah, keep reading.